Okay, hello everybody. Today I am here with a member of the Genesys Cloud Architect team, Mr. Jim Ullyot. How's it going, Jim?
Hey Zino, good.
So today we're going to talk about using the replayer in architect mode. Pretty handy tool that has only come in recently, and we're just trying to get everybody on board into having an easier way to be able to debug your problems or errors that you run into while you're working with architect. So first up, Jim, I wanted to get an idea of how people were handling debugging within Architect Flow before we created the replayer. What was that process like?
So usually, the way people would try and troubleshoot flows, I mean, it was really up to them. Um, because as you're going to see here, we have a neat execution data layer that we've delivered to help build this replayer that Zeno's going to help demo. But yeah, largely it would be having flows put information in participant data, or people would write data actions and call them to basically log, well, I made it here in a flow, or they'd log out values that were representative of some kind of state of the flow at a particular point in time, right, to help them with debugging later. So, you know, some way the flow itself would call actions to perform something which would effectively try and log some sort of state or data to a place where someone could then go look at it later to see what happened. Um, other things, like for call flows, right? People could kind of listen to menus as they were traversing menus, or they would play audio actions to interactively hear it say, "I'm here," or "This is the value," right? But those would be some typical ways in which people did it.
So for our developers out there, try and think of a world where you hadn't been introduced to debugging in any of your IDEs and you had to, debug your code. So for example, the replayer is a visual depiction of execution history of a flow instance. A flow instance is, the first time when a flow runs, pretty much from start to finish, that's your flow instance. And you get critical pieces of data at each stage in the flow. So to narrow down what happened in each stage in the flow, we've introduced the replayer that provides you a quite handy tool. I've had a chance to use it myself. I don't work in Architect a lot, but for the works that we've done, and we'll show you a blueprint here where you can deploy flows and get to testing this out. But I don't get to work out in the Architect area a lot, but for the work that I've done there, the replayer has been quite handy. I'm a developer myself, and practically the replayer is your debugger, only a little bit better, and it's better because you're you're running your debugger with previous data. When you run a debugger traditionally, you're hoping that you're able to navigate to the same error that prompted you to even use a debugger in the first place. But with your replayer, you're running on previous data, something that's already existent, meaning you can fast forward and go back to see the same pieces of data from that flow instance. So my opinion, this is even a little bit step higher than your traditional debugger and your IDEs. So for my first couple questions, you can't just run a replayer by going to your architect and pretty much pressing view flow instances and running your replayer. There are certain things that you need. For example, do we need permissions? Is this available to everybody that uses architect?
Yeah, so I guess like the base of what's going on here is the replayer is replaying execution data, like Zeno was talking about there, and it's replaying instances, right? And so these are basically like they're JSON data that expresses how the flow ran. And one of the first things you need to do is turn on execution data for your organization. So the storage of execution data. That's done in admin in your organization settings. And Zeno, are you going over any of that right now, or is that's just
Yes.
let me to okay.
We can show our viewers how to see the permissions that they will need within the for the replayer. We won't show exactly how you can turn those on, but I'm sure for the people that it applies to, they know how to turn on execution data for their orgs.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, there's kind of two modes of it here. One is turning on execution data storage for your organization, right? That's in the organization settings. And then you're going to say, okay, and by the way, I want to turn on execution data storage for flows.
Right.
So there's two toggles inside of admin for that. Once you do that, right, now you've turned on the ability to store execution data instances. And then now there's also permissions associated with viewing, the execution data instances for users. And that's what Zino is showing here.
That's what we,
So,
so you need this flow instance execution data, right, Jim?
yep.
And you also need the architect flow instance query permission. I have the flow instance all permission, but you specifically need that query permission.
The basic gist of it is there's permissions for viewing instance data.
Yes.
There's also permissions around configuring log levels for flows. So that's how much data a particular flow instance, will contain in it. So the higher your log level, the more data you get. The lower, the less data.
Right. The first thing we're thinking of when we want to use a replay is try to figure out what errors happen in the process of our flow executing. My first question would be, how is error handling set up in a flow?
So error handling, when we're talking about errors in this case that like Zino is referring to here, we're talking about error events. Okay, so as far as error event handling, it's in the flow settings. Like if you go to, like you could open up, oops, you want, sure, ours differentiator bot.
Yes, guide.
Right, see that event handling underneath settings on the left?
On the left.
There's bot flow, event handling.
Put this in edit mode.
Yeah. There you go.
So this tells you what's going to happen when an unexpected error happens within your flow.
So yeah, unexpected errors in this case would be something like a divide by zero. It also could be something like you're trying to run over 10,000 actions
Okay.
in the flow, right? So it may not operationally be some problem with a particular action, but it's just, hey, look, you're trying to run too many actions in this flow. Like, that's too much. We're going to take you to error handling and then do whatever you have configured.
For our viewers,
So
let me show you a simple example of what that looks like. So let's come out. Let's go to our bot flow. So we currently have it in edit mode now. And I've run the bot flow a few times, so it's logged up execution data. So Jim, this is what you would be referring to in terms of
yes.
data that subscribes to an instance that's run of your flow.
Yep. And like, right, each row there on that grid, that's an instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a search result for an instance, and you click on it and we'll actually open up the real instance. But yeah, that's what it represents.
What about the view query? What does this help us with in regards to our replay? We're seeing execution data.
So the replayer itself is actually replaying an instance of a flow. Like you figured out the one you want to see it replay,
Right.
and then you can replay it. The query builder here is saying, I want to go ahead and see what instances are available that meet certain criteria,
Okay.
right? So that's what you're going to do on the query builder is you're going to say, I want to find, right? Like I want to find all flows that encountered an error.
Mm-hmm.
And ta-da, right? You can run that query. The query builder is going to query our public API. We get the results back and it will display them. Or like in this case, what you've got flow ID equals a GUID, right? I want to see all flow instances for this flow identifier.
There we go. So these are the
Yep.
other criteria that you can work with, viewing the invoking work item ID, and you can see some other flow criteria like the error code, warning code, the invoked error, and there also with conversation criteria, you can see a query based on the conversation ID. Let's get out of
Which
here.
is, by the way, is super helpful, right? If you want to see various flows that ran for a given conversation,
Right.
right? Yeah, query by your conversation ID. And you can see like the inbound call, maybe inbound queue, whatever. But that's very powerful because, right, you're not looking up, it's by virtue of the conversation ID, all the flows that ran for it.
So let's test out how the replayer works. We've got a web message bot deployed, and you can easily set up this page on your computer. All you have to do is navigate to the blueprint that we have out in the Genesys Dev Center. I'm going to drop that in the link of this video. And we have a repo in there, a link to the repo in there where you could easily clone this repo and get set up using Terraform. It's a quick build, doesn't take longer than 30 minutes to get everything set up, and you can test this out yourself. We want to show you a very important part about the replayer and the query finder. We've manually adjusted our flow to force a divide by zero error because we think it's really important to point out. Because there's many cases where if you have a flow, if you have multiple flows, you want to specify which ones exactly are causing your error. So previously, you could see in our message bot, it would tell you that they are 40%, you're 40% of our, you're in the 40% range of our loyal customers. Now we're gonna run this again. And we've directly impacted it to force an error. Where are my orders? Why not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll give it that. So you can see here it triggered our error message because we've experienced an error in our flow that we did not expect. Let's go ahead and answer this. We'll close this up because for the purpose of our example, and we're gonna come out here to our bot flow. In fact, let's come out to our inbound message flow actually. And let's go in there. Let's use the query finder to figure out which flow had an error. Jim, you want to guide me through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, well, again, I've lost my arrows, but on the right of the flow ID, there's an X, like query builder, flow ID, go all the way over to the right, and you can clear it out.
Where is that?
Yep. Click there. Okay, now what we're going to do is flow criteria, and we're going to say flow invoked error at the bottom.
Flow invoked error.
Yep.
Okay, this.
Yep. There you go. And true. So the neat part about what Zino's doing here now is he's saying, hey, go ahead and this isn't for a specific flow. I want to run a query and say, show me all the flows that have encountered an error. Okay. And so in this use case, this is a flow that's invoked the error event. So it's going to kick in your error handler.
All right, this is our most recent one, our digital bot flow here.
Yep. But that's cool because like these are things that are encountering errors, right? Like it helps you to say, oh, I should go look at this one because
Yes.
this flow here is encountering an error. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. All right. Let's figure out where our error came from by looking at our logs and running the replayer. Okay. Wow, it took us straight to the event handling section. Could you explain more about this?
Right. Well, I mean, what we're capturing here in the execution is the point at which your flow encountered an error. And typically, like when a flow encounters an error, it's going to be the last thing on the timeline.
Yeah.
right? So you can see it captured there,
Nice.
right? Take a look. You
And
can
it's
see
all
what caused the error,
advisor. Nice.
right? It says the parameter name is the divisor, right? It's on the communication. The reason is a divide by 0. We show you the stack, the execution ID, that's the action instance inside the flow instance. So believe it or not, every time we run an action, we give them a unique identifier as well. But like that information right there is very specific, and it's telling you, like, on the communication, see how it says setting name there? I'm pointing at my screen. You can't see me pointing, but I'm pointing to what you're looking at there. But
Yeah.
right, there are details. There's a problem with the divisor with your division operator. Actually, yeah, thank you. Right, the setting name is on communication. There's your reason, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you go back, you can see like the context. Click on that context there. Click there. There's the action that it's associated with, right? So that's the error handling information. Click there, and we take you right to the action that had the error, right?
Nice.
And you can see it told you before on the setting name, it said the setting name is communication. Ding, ding, right there. You've got it underneath on the right. See where it says communication 17 at the top. If you go straight down, that's your communication setting. That's what it's applicable to. And then Zino, can you crack open or just click on the arrow inside the communication expression on the right? Click. You're going to open a large expression editor.
Yeah.
See, look, there's a divide by 0 error. This is what we put in the logic to show you how, like, it's an obvious case. 1 divided by 1 minus 1 is dividing by 0, right? But that could be your flow logic too that's in there, right? You reference a flow variable and it's 0, and all of a sudden you divide by 0. But here's how you're using the replayer. There's your error. Click on it, go to the action that encountered the error, and it told you the setting to go to, what the problem was. We open up the expression and it's right there that it's 1 minus 1, but right, there you go. That's like super powerful stuff.
Is there anything I'm missing out? I think we've given our viewers a good glimpse on what the power of the real player can give you.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean, as far as like, yes, we could all we could keep talking about this for a really long time, but as far as an intro to the replayer, just kind of looking at some of the basics here, um, you know, Zeno did a good job talking about some of the permissions too and stuff like that at the beginning, right? So always remember that you got to turn it on in order to be able to use it, right? And then yeah, this is how you do it. Think of those execution data log levels, right? It's important to, especially when you're developing, you probably want to dial the log levels up to all. You see exactly how beneficial it can be and how you can use it and see what happened. Go tweak your logic, fix it, try it out again. And
Guys,
yeah,
thank you for the gist from me and Jim. Thank you very much for coming to this DevDrop. And I'm gonna leave the links for all the required tools that you need and for the blueprints as well. So you can go in there and deploy this message flow, deploy the bot flow, and you'll be able to test this out yourself. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
awesome sauce.